We begin today the Gemara on Daf Samach Ches Amud Beis, the very last two lines and the Yomud. So right before this, the Gemara brought a story about a mouse that fell into a barrel of beer. And the Gemara brought the Psak Din of Rav that the whole barrel of beer becomes Aser. And the Gemara brought a few interpretations why it's Aser, because it would seem that this mouse gives a bad taste, a noisin tam levgam, to the beer. And in such a case, we paskin that it's mutter. So the Gemara brought one pshat that because by a mouse the whole isser of the Torah is a chiddush, so even if it gives a bad taste, it's still going to be aser. Another pshat the Gemara brought, Rava actually says that no, the mouse actually gives a good taste to the beer. Okay, you have to know what taste you're looking for. So therefore it's going to be aser.
Oh, where do you buy it?
Okay, so the Gemara here brings now another similar case and asks a shaila regarding this. The shaila was asked, Nofal legoy chala. What's if this mouse fell into vinegar? Vinegar is different than beer. It has a much sharper and stronger taste. So what's the halacha in this case? So Rashi here says that the Gemara shaila is regarding vinegar. If I go with the pshat that we said before in the Gemara here, Rava's pshat, that in the case of beer, the mouse gives a good taste, what's with vinegar? Should I say that regarding vinegar as well, it gives a good taste? Or maybe not. Vinegar is different. Vinegar is very sharp, and over here it does not give a good taste. That's the shaila according to Rashi. From Taisus, it's mashma that the Gemara is asking, based on what it said before, that by a mouse it gives a bad taste, and therefore would be mutter. Since we paskin that Neisan Tam Levgam is mutter, and Rava does not accept this concept that a mouse is different, it's a chiddush of the Torah, that by the beer it actually gives a bad taste and it'll be mutter. The question is over here whether this gives a bad taste or not. Since the vinegar is so sharp, so whatever bad taste this mouse gives, you don't feel it. You don't feel the bad taste because it's too sharp. So maybe over here it would be a problem.
Like when I'm worried about tumor for the shirts.
The tumah is a different thing. It could be a problem, true. The Gemara is still going to discuss a little bit about tumah, but over here, that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing the Isser Achila, the Isser to eat the sheretz. That's the shaila when it gets mixed into this vinegar. Just to clarify, what we're talking about over here is, at this point in the Gemara, and similar also before regarding the mouse that falls into the beer, that it's there and it remains long enough that even after it's taken out, that it still leaves a taste inside. That's what we're talking about. Let's say it was there for 24 hours or however long that is. If it fell in and you took it right out, then it's not a problem. It fell in and it remained there for a period of time, like a halacha of kavush, it becomes pickled there, and then it was taken out. So now you have only the problem with the taste. But if the actual mouse is still inside and you're going to eat the mouse itself, obviously that's a problem. That's not what we're talking about. It's a taste inside this beer or a vinegar now in this case that we're discussing. So Avalera Hillel Vashi. So Rav says to Rav Ashi, "Hava uvde bei Rav Kahana." This case happened by Rav Kahana. V'asar Rav Kahana. And Rav Kahana said that the vinegar, you're not allowed to drink this vinegar. Amalei. So Rav Ashi said, you can't prove from the Psak Din of Rav Kahana because Ahu imartute imartet. The case that happened over there was that this mouse that fell in was cut into little pieces inside this vinegar, and in such a case, even a very small piece, Rashi says that the size of the sheretz that's aser is bekadasha, as small as a lentil. Usually, by the isser of eating things, anything that's aser is a kazayas, which is much bigger. But over here, the isser is a nadasha, very small, and therefore, just like it's tumah actually, and therefore over here we're afraid that there's little pieces inside. You didn't remove it, so when the person is going to drink from it, he may end up swallowing a piece that's the size of a nadasha that's aser. That's why over there, Rav Kahana said it's aser. But in a case where it's just a taste, and they remove the mouse itself, maybe there it would actually be mutter. So we have no raya from Rav Kahana's Psak Din. This Rashi over here is a very interesting Rashi, because Rashi is saying that the concern is that he may eat a piece that's as the size of an adasha. It's mashma from Rashi that dafke, the concern is dafke if he eats it in the size of an adasha. First of all, some ask, so then why do you have to aser it? Could have just strained it, and then you can drink the beer with that, or not the beer. We're talking here about vinegar. So it must be that we're talking about some thick vinegar that you can't strain it, and therefore there's a concern that you may end up drinking it together with these pieces from this mouse. Another point is Rashi here says that the issue is that he might eat ka'adasha, which means that Rashi holds that in this case the halacha of chatzi shir asam and atayra would not apply. Rashi is saying that the issue is that he may eat that shir of the isser, which is an adash. Usually we have a halacha of chatzi shir asam and atayra. Over here, Rashi does not apply that. And also, it's mashma and Rashi. If this person is drinking from this vinegar and he doesn't end up actually eating any pieces from this mouse that's inside, it's okay. Even though it has the taste inside, but it becomes bottle. And there's pieces inside as well. The pieces are actually there. It still all becomes bottle. But if he's going to eat a piece of this sheretz or this mouse, which is an adasha, then there'll be a problem. That's what it's mashma from this Rashi. This is a famous Rashi that there's different things that you learn out from it. Okay, so Dr. Gemara, Ravina Sava, regarding this case with the vinegar, the mouse and the vinegar, Ravina thought to say, the shiuri, to estimate, when do I say that that mouse, the taste of it, becomes bottle inside this vinegar? B'meya v'chad. Only if there's 101 times against this mouse that fell in. And the reason is because he held that the taste of the mouse inside this vinegar could be so strong that even though usually, what's the halacha? By anything that gives a taste, how much do we estimate in order to know that the taste is bottle? 60. But over here though, because he held that the taste of this mouse could be so strong that you're going to have more, 101. And where does he see a source for this? It's not going to be any less from what Chachamim said regarding Truma. The Tanan, by Truma, it says, Truma oila be'echad demeya. By Truma, when Truma falls into Chulin, over there it has to be 101 against the Truma. So over here, because the taste of the mouse is so strong, it has to be also the same amount. Amalei Rav Tachlife Bar Giza le Ravina. So, but Rav Tachlife Bar Giza asks Ravina about this. If your concern is that the taste of this mouse could be so strong, so then maybe you shouldn't be matter at all. Dilme ketavlin shel truma bigdeira dami. It should be compared to spices of truma or really any other isser that falls into a pot and the spices have a very strong taste. Deloi bottle tamai. That over here, no amount of food that there is more in this pot against this spices will ever help. It's never going to be mevatel the taste, and there's no there's no din of bittel here. So if so, this mouse should not be bottle at all. Rav Achoy actually had an opposite opinion. He said shir b'chala b'chamshin. He said when the mouse falls into the vinegar, so then it's enough to have 50 times the amount of vinegar against this mouse in order for it to be bottle. He actually held that since vinegar itself is very sharp, it's enough, even though usually it's bottle b'shishim, 60 here, 50 times against it will be enough to be mevatel it. Rav Shmuel bereid Ravike, shir b'shichra b'shitin. Rav Shmuel bereid Ravike regarding beer. So he was Mishayir, that if a mouse falls in, it'll be bottle if there's 60 times bittul b'shishim, the way it always is. And the Gemara here is saying this regarding beer, not going back to the case of beer. And the halacha is idi v'idi b'shitten. Whether it's beer, whether it's vinegar, whatever it may be, when a mouse or any isser falls inside, when is it bottled? When do we know that the taste is not there anymore? That's it for 60 times. V'chein kol isurin sheb'teira. The same applies to any isser in the Teira, and Rashi's lashon here is this is the halacha revachas b'Yisrael. This is how we always paskin that whatever any isser falls in, it's bottled b'shishim. What's the one exception? Rashi says chametz. A chametz over there, chachamim wa geyser, that even a mashuhu will also be aser. And Rashi's pshat for this is because even by every isser, this whole concept of bittul b'shishim only applies by min b'she'enei minai, if it's not the same kind. But if it's a min b'minai, if it's an isser that falls into the same min, there it's going to be also even by mashu. There's actually a machlokes about this in the Gemara. We'll have it later here in the Gemara. But Rab and Shmuel hold that by min b'minai there is no bittul. So Rashi says by chametz, chachamim were more machmer and were geyser that even by a min b'she'ena minai, which usually is bottle b'shishim, they were geyser because of min b'minai, which is not bottle, that even min b'she'ena minai by chametz should be aser. That's Rashi's pshat in this inyan. Taisvis and Reiv Rishayim and the halacha and Shulchan Aruch, actually we don't paskin this way. The halacha of bittul b'shishim applies both by min she'ena minai and by min b'minai as well. That's how we paskin. Not like Rashi here, which is going according to Rav and Shmuel. We don't paskin this way. This is going back to a halacha that we learned before, actually in the previous Perek, where it's speaking about a yid and a guy that are producing wine together. So if you hear the Mishnah says, Shahaya Mavir im Yisrael, this guy that is transporting together with a yid, kade yayin, jugs of wine, mimakim lamakim, from one place to another. So im haya becheskas hamishtamer, if this wine is in such a condition that you know that it's guarded. The guy did not touch it. And the Gemara will explain when that is. Then mutter. Then it'll be okay. Basically what the Gemara will say is, when the Yid is walking behind the guy, so you can see what the guy is doing. You can see if the guy is tampering with the wine. But even if the Yid walked away, but he didn't let the guy know that is, how long he's going away for and when he's going to come back, so the guy is afraid to touch the wine, because he doesn't know when the Yid's going to show up. If the Yid lets the guy know that he's going on a different path, he's leaving. How long did he tell him he's leaving? What's the shear that we're concerned that the guy could then open and touch this wine? Kedei sheyishtaim, in order for him to make a hole in this barrel. The word yishtaim, Rashi says, it's an unusual word. It says by Bilam, shusum ha'ayin, which means a poked out eye. So for him to be able to open up this barrel, and then take out wine, or drink from it, or touch the wine, v'yistaim, and then close it up, v'yigayv, and it'll dry up. If the Yid tells the guy that he's leaving for that period of time, then there's a concern that the guy may have done this. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, and it's actually a longer period of time. We're not concerned that the guy is going to make a hole. He's afraid to make a hole because he won't be able to seal it up properly. So rather, kedei sheyiftach es hachavis, as long as it would take for the guy to open this barrel, to, in other words, to remove the lid with the however it was closed, and then the yigayv, and then he has to close the lid again, and the tigav, and it would dry up. Which is a longer period of time. Only then, if the yid left for that long, will there be a concern. Okay, now here the Mishnah brings another two cases that are a similar point to this. A yid places his wine onto a wagon or a boat, and the guy is transporting it for him, and the Yid is also going along with him. But the Yid went on a shorter route, and he went off to a shorter route, and he went to the country, and the Yid went and bathed, and then the Yid comes back to the wine. Mutter. The Yid is allowed to use this wine because the guy didn't know when the Yid is ever going to show up. He didn't tell him how long he's leaving for. However, if you let him know, as we said before, Shu'u Maflik, that he's leaving for a certain period of time, and that is Kadesh Yishtaim, V'yistaim, V'yigav, Tanakama, to make a hole and close it up again, it'll be Aser. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, Kadesh Yiftach as a chavis, to open up the lid, V'yigav, and then seal it again, V'tigav, and it'll dry up. A third case, a person owns a store, he's selling wine, and he leaves his Gayish worker there in the store alone. Afapi sheyatza or sheyaitze v'nichnas, and the Yid leaves the store, he goes out, he comes in. So mutter, even though he left the guy there alone, it's still mutter. However, if he lets the Gayish worker know shu maflik kedei sheyishtem v'yistem v'yigav, long enough for him to make a hole and then close it and for it to dry, it'll be aser. It's only if it's kedei sheyiftach esachavis v'yigav v'tigav, as long as it would take him to remove the lid and then seal it again, and it would dry up. The Gemara will explain why it was necessary for the Mishnah to say all these three cases. So the Mishnah, another case, if you're eating with a guy in your house on the table, you left jugs of wine on the table, and also al adulfiki. You also left a jug of wine not on the table itself, but on the cupboard. So the Yid left the guy, v'yatza, and he went out. So masha ala shulchan, what's left on the table, asa. That will be asa for you, because if it's on the table, the guy assumes that it's there for him to drink from it, so he's gonna drink from it when the Yid leaves. But sha'ala dulviki, that is, what's left on the cupboard and it's not served on the table, mutter. That's something which is allowed because it's not prepared for eating, and the guy is afraid to take it. He doesn't know when the Yid's going to show up, and he's not supposed to touch things that are not on the table. But ve'em amaloi, if before the Yid leaves, he tells the guy, have a maizig, v'shaise, you can pour yourself and drink. So now the guy gets permission from the Yid. He understands from this that he can take whatever he wants. Af sha'al hadulviki oser. So even what's not on the table, even what's on the dulviki, on the cupboard, is also going to be oser. Chavis, psuchais, if you have open barrels that are left there, asurais, they will be aser immediately because the guy could right away pour for himself. Astumais, if it's closed barrels, then mutarais, it'll be allowed, as we said before, kedei sheyiftach v'yigayv v'tigayv. This is actually like the opinion of Shimon Gamliel, that it'll be allowed until, if the Yid left for long enough, that it'll take him to take off the lid and seal it again and for it to dry up. What does it mean that if the Yid is traveling with the guy and the Yid left him, that the wine will still be mutter if it could be assumed that it's still guarded? The Mishnah didn't describe what that means. What is cheskas hamishtamer? Says the Gemara Keditanya, as it's explained in a brayse. Harei shayu chamarov upayalov tu'unin tares. So here, this brayse is actually not talking about wine. It's talking about the halachas of tumah and tara. So a person loaded his donkey drivers or his workers, they're carrying for him tares, food that are tar, and he wants them to remain pure. So afila hiflig mehen yoser mimil, even if he separated and he went away from them a longer distance than a mil. That's one girsa we have here. Another girsa here is that it's kedei mil, only the amount of a mil. Taharaisav tahiris. So even if he went away from them, the things that his workers are carrying for him, this is amaratzim. The workers that are carrying for him, these are amaratzim that are not careful usually with things of tumah and tara. It'll still be tar, because they're always afraid that he may show up and come back. But v'im amalem l'chu, if he clearly told them, you go, I'm eventually going to come after you. So then they don't think that he's coming so quickly. So he told them to go. As soon as it's out of his eyesight, all the things that he has that were pure are not going to be tummy. They may touch it, they may make it tummy. Okay, so you see over here that this is the point. If he doesn't tell them when he's coming back, then it's okay. But there's a machlokes in the Rishayim whether there is actually a shear, a dafka mil, or it doesn't matter. As I mentioned, one girsa is that it's dafka mil. That's what it says in the Riv, the Rosh, and the Rambam. But in our Gemara here, it says even yoser mil, as long as you didn't tell the guy when you're coming back. Or in this case, we're talking here about the amaratzim that are carrying things that are tar, then it's still going to be tar. Okay, but now the Gemara asks, and according to Rashi, the continuation of the discussion of the Gemara is not regarding the halacha in our Mishnah, but it's regarding the halacha here in this braise regarding the taras that an amaretz is carrying. Fragt the Gemara, Maishna Reisha or Maishna Sefer? Why should we make a distinction between the Reisha and the Sefer? The Reisha he didn't say when he's coming back, and the Sefer he said when he's coming back. Why should we make a distinction? Rashi explains that the Gemara's question over here is, we're not talking about barrels of wine that are sealed closed in this braise. In the Mishnah, yeah, but not in the braise. We're talking over here about open food that they're carrying for him that are open. That the person that's carrying, the amaratzim that are carrying it, don't have to open up a lid and then seal it back. They can just touch it right away. So if that's the case, why should there be any difference between the Reisha and the Sefer, even if you leave just for a little bit, and they don't know when you're going to show up, it should still be a problem. Okay, so the Gemara explains, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Reisha b'mitayach hamar v'paylav. The case over here is in the Reisha that the workers, his donkey drivers or his other workers that are carrying the food, he was mitayr them. He made sure to have them taivel in the mikveh before they're going to transport this food for him. So therefore, it's not a problem in the Reisha. Says the Gemara again, lekach for this sake. Fact the Gemara, but if that's the case, ihachi Sefer nami. So on the Sefer as well, even if he tells them he's leaving for a certain period of time and they could touch it and they could tamper with it, but he was matayr them. Says the Gemara, Eina ma'aretz makbid al magachavere. No, in the Sefer, the problem is, even though you will matayr them, but these amaratzim, on the way, they may meet someone else, which is tameh, and touch another person, which is tameh, and then they'll become tameh, and they'll be mitami your food. In fact, the Gemara, if that's your concern, yachafil reisha nami, that applies in the reisha as well. You would toivel them in the mikveh, and they're tar, but along the way, they may find someone else and become tameh. Says the Gemara, Omar Rave, Sarave, huh? Reisha, afil reisha nami, nema hachi. We should say the same thing. Yeah. So Omar Rave, so Rave answers. So the other gersa here is that it's Rave. This says it's Rave. Rave says, "B'balaem derech akalosain." In the reisha, the reason why we're not concerned is because the owner could show up from some side road, from some crooked path, from some way where they won't expect him to show up. Because he was mitayr them. And it's only if they're going to meet someone else and they're not going to be careful and touch someone else and then going to come and touch the food. So therefore in the reisha we're not concerned for this. Because the balabas may show up from some side road. If so, Sefer nami, in the Sefer as well, why wouldn't we also say that they're afraid to make things tameh or afraid to touch their friend and then make it tameh if the balabas may show up from a side road? So the answer is, Kivin the Amma Lahu Lahem, that is, since he told them, Lahu, you go. Vani ba acharechem. I'm going to follow, come after you. Samcha datayu. They are relying that the Balabas is not going to show up. They see that he trusts them, that they should go ahead of him. So here, they're not saying this. So over here, you see that the Pshat in the Gemara is that in order for the Taris and the ratio of the Mishnah to be tired, it has to be a case where he didn't tell them when he's showing up again. He just went off, but he didn't tell them. And also there has to be a derech hakalase, which means if it's some kind of a route where there is no side road, there is no way that he can just show up suddenly, so then the Taris are not going to be tired. This is all Rashi's Pshat in the Gemara, that this whole discussion here that we just had is all only regarding the Taris and the Braise. But regarding our Mishnah, where it speaks about the Yayin Nesach, the Gemara is not saying this added condition of Derech HaKalosein. As long as the Yid separated from the guy and he could show up anytime and he didn't tell him when he's coming, that's enough. Whether there is a Derech HaKalosein, whether or not, it doesn't matter. But other Rishayim and Shulchan Aruch, I believe, it paskins that even regarding wine as well, the continuation of the Gemara goes also back on the Mishnah. That by wine, when you left the guy, it's not enough that you didn't tell him when you're showing up again. It has to be possible for you to show up suddenly with a derech hakalasim from a side road. Only then is it going to be mutter. What's the reason to be mechalik? Remember not the pshat, but this is the two pshatim over here in the Gemara. Okay, going back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah brought, as I mentioned over there, we had three different examples. The Gemara explains it here. 3 examples of a case where the Yid is going away from the guy, and where you have the shear of how long he went away from him. So the case in the Mishnah had this was actually the last case in the Mishnah. The Bach switches it around, the way the order was in the Mishnah. You left the guy in the store. You left the guy to go in a wagon or a boat. And the first case of the Mishnah was when they were going by foot. They were traveling together, walking. So in all these cases, you had in the Mishnah the machlokes, how long is it that you left the guy that it would still be mutter? Is it the amount of time for him to make a hole to take out the wine, or the amount of time for him to take off the lid and then to seal it again? Says the Gemara, it's necessary to say all 3 cases. Because the Itane, if it would say the first case of the Yid that's walking together with the guy, the Savar, because he thinks, Dilma Asi v'chazile. At any time, the Yid can come back and show up, and he'll see what I'm doing. He didn't tell me when he's coming back. And as I mentioned, according to the Rishayim, it means also that he can show up from a side road suddenly. So over there, it'll be mutter. But if the guy is traveling on a wagon or on a boat, so over here, I would say, that over here, he can take his boat off the path. He can travel with a boat much quicker than going by foot. He can just take his boat off of the regular path, and the same with the wagon. And the guy will do whatever he wants. And then when the Yid is going to come back and he's going to find this guy, and the guy will say, "Oh, he went off the path. He didn't realize, or there was a wave, or something happened." So over here, when he's traveling in a wagon or a boat, it's much easier for the guy to just go further away and do whatever he wants. Therefore, it has to mention this case as well. If it would say only the second case of the guy traveling on a wagon or a boat, I would say Mishum de Savar, because still the guy is afraid. Dilma Asi ba'orcha achriti, the Yid may show up from some other way. The koi aguda, and I'll stand on a wall. The chazili, and I'll see what I'm doing. But if you leave a guy himself in your store, he may lock the door. And he'll do whatever he wants. And when the Yid will come back, he'll find some excuse why the door was locked. So you can't trust the guy himself there, even if you're not telling him when you're coming back. Therefore, it has to say this case as well in the store that it's still going to be mutter. Right, so I believe the Mefarshim say that it has to be in a case where when you came back, the boat or the wagon was on the same path where it was before. And when you came back to your store, the door wasn't locked. And you're not concerned that in between he locked the door, or that in between the boat went off the path and he came back. But if you actually show back up and you see that the door is locked, or you see that the boat is on a completely different path, then it's not going to be mutter. Then you know that he took it off the path, possibly because he wanted to play around or use the wine for himself. But the chiddush is that we don't think that in between he locked the door, or in between he went off the path. That's why I have to say these additional cases. Amar Abba Bar Bachane, Amar Rab Yochanan. Rabbi Bar Chanina explains the machlokes in the Mishnah. Whether we're concerned whether the length of time that the Yid leaves is for the guy to make a hole and take out of the barrel, which is shorter than the guy that Rav Shimon Gamliel says, and the guy would have to remove the whole lid and then seal it again. So when is the machlokes? Rav Yechon says machlokes b'shal sid. The machlokes is when this cover, the lid, is sealed with sid, with plaster, with white plaster. So then there's a machlokes over here whether when he makes the hole, is this something that if the guy would make a hole and then patch up the hole, could the Yid detect this when he comes back and sees this? So according to the Tanakama, this is something that the Yid will not be able to detect. In white plaster, he's able to seal it very nicely. However, Avo b'shal tit, but if this lid is sealed with cement, Divrei HaKoil, here everybody will agree that we're only concerned if Kadesh Yiftach v'yigayv for the guy to open up the seal properly and then to close it and seal it again, and it should dry up. But we're not concerned that it's going to make a hole. Why? Because by cement, what's the nature of cement? Even after you put on the cement, the fresh cement is darker than the dried cement. It whitens, it's not the same color. So therefore, in such a case, if he made a hole in this barrel, and then he's patching up the hole, you'll clearly see the difference in the color. So only if he's going to remove the entire lid and cement the whole thing again, then there's going to be a concern. So the question was asked on this, what Rabbi Yechanan said, from the way we see in the Braise, it spells out what was the discussion between the Chacham and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. That's the gear we have here in the Gemara, but the Bach, and the Gemara here says a few times the word stumay, the Bach says it's supposed to be like in the Mishnah, shetumay nicker. We're talking over here about what the Chachamim said, that the guy may make a hole and take out wine this way. So the Rav Shimon Gamliel says, but shetumay nicker, if the guy makes a hole and then he patches it up, the Yid will notice that he made a hole. And where will he notice this? Beimul maila or beimul mata. If you take that lid, you'll be able to notice the patch that the guy made, both on the outside, that's what maila means, on the outside of this lid, and then if you'll remove the lid and you'll open it up, you'll turn it over, look on the inside of the lid, you'll also see the patch of this hole that the guy made here. So then, why are you saying that we're concerned that the guy will make a hole? Therefore, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says we're only concerned if the guy will remove the whole lid and he'll seal it again. Okay, so now the Gemara says, if you're going to say that the machlokes here between Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and the Chacham is in a case where the guy is sealing it again with cement, this is what it says here. That's that if the guy made a hole and he's patching it up, you'll see the difference both on the outside and on the outside and on the inside, on the bottom, on the inside, because as I mentioned, the color of cement is different. So if it's a fresher cement, it doesn't have that whiteness. It's not as light as the old cement. So therefore, you say you can notice on whatever side you're going to look at it, you'll see this. But if you're going to say like Rabbi Yechanan said that they're arguing only about a case of white plaster, if so, if you're going to take off this lid and you'll turn it over and look on the inside of it, you'll be able to tell that the guy made a hole here. Why? Because on the inside, the guy never opened up the barrel. So on the inside, when he patched the hole, he didn't smooth it out properly. So over there, you'll notice it. But on the top, on the outside of the lid, how are you going to see this? You're not going to be able to see because it's all the same color. It's white, it's beautiful, and he smoothed it out properly. So why is Rav Shimon Gamliel arguing to Chachamim that you'll notice even on the outside? So the Gemara answers, no, the pshat could still be like Rabbi Yechon. Rav Shimon Gamliel, Rav Shimon Gamliel, when he was arguing with the Chachamim, he wasn't sure in what case Chachamim were speaking about. Were Chachamim speaking about a case where it's made with plaster or with cement? And therefore, this is what he's telling the Chachamim. If you're talking about a case where this is made with cement, so then then how can you say that there's a concern that the guy may make a hole here? So if it's cement and the guy patched it up, so then that's something that you can notice both on the outside, on the top, and on the inside. And if he made it with plaster, if this is it's the way it's sealed is with plaster. So that's what you're talking about. Yes, outside on the top you can smooth it out and you won't see any difference, but lamata, but then when the Yid will open up the barrel and he'll take off the cover and he'll turn it over, he'll see over there that the guy couldn't smooth it out on the inside, he only smoothed it out on the outside. So therefore, the taina of Rav Shimon Gamliel to the Chachamim was regarding both cases. Now, what did the Rabbanon answer to this? The Rabbanon will say that kivin de mulmayla lo yediya, that in a case where he makes a hole in plaster, so since on the outside it's white and it's smooth and the Yid cannot notice that the guy tampered with this, so he doesn't think to turn it over to look. It seems to be so smooth on the outside, he's not even necessarily going to pay attention, he's not going to look inside. So we can't rely on the Yid noticing this. Inami or zimnin dechalim, sometimes it will be sealed and be very smooth, even without the guy smoothing it out on the inside, because he never opened it up. But maybe sometimes it will end up being smooth even on the inside. So therefore, according to the Chachamim, we're still concerned for the guy to make a hole. Rava says we paskin like Rab Shimon Gamliel. In this case, they were only concerned for a length of time for the guy to remove the whole lid and reseal it. How do we know? Because we see in the Mishnah that in the end of the Mishnah it says stam like Rab Shimon Gamliel. Because the Tanan, what was the last case in the Mishnah? He's eating with the guy by the table, and he leaves the jug of wine on the table, and dulfaki, wine that was left on a cupboard. And the Yid leaves. What's on the table is asa because the guy is going to serve himself. Because that's not made for him to touch. Now, if the Yid, however, tells him, have him you can pour and take for yourself, then what was left on the cupboard is also aser. Now, then the Mishnah went on to say, Chavi is psuchais, if you left open barrels of wine, asurais. Even if you leave for a short period, the guy can right away touch it, it's aser. Stumais, if you leave closed, sealed barrels of wine, mutarais, it'll be mutter. What length of time if the Yid left? So here the Mishnah says, stam like Rab Shimon Gamliel, kedei sheyiftach v'yigay v'tigay, for the amount of time for the guy to open, to take off the lid, and then to seal it again, and it should be dry. So here it's clear that in the end of the Mishnah, it says stam like Rab Shimon Gamliel. So what's the rule always is, whenever the Mishnah brings a machlekes, and then afterwards is stam, machlekes v'ach stam, we pass like the stam Mishnah. Says the Gemara Pshit, it's very clear, it's very obvious that here the end of the Mishnah is stam like Rab Shimon Gamliel. Why was it necessary for Rava to say this? Answers the Gemara, because ma'ad time I would think to say kul Rab Shimon Gamliel katani lo. Maybe the end of the Mishnah is not a stam Mishnah. It says Rab Shimon Gamliel lo, and the whole continuation, including this, is part of the statement of Rab Shimon Gamliel. Kamash malon, that the end is not part of his statement; it's a stam Mishnah. Now says the Gemara. The kaim along kavasei that Rab Shimon Gamliel. Now that we see that we paskin like Rab Shimon Gamliel, which says that we're not concerned for the guy to make a hole and then to patch it up because that will be noticed. We're not afraid for this to make this hole. And also another thing here, the Gemara brings back another thing that we learned earlier in the Masechta. We also paskin like Rabbi Eliezer the lechayish leziyufa. This was something that was brought earlier in the Masechta regarding wine of a yid that's being stored by a guy. Whether you have to have a chaysim b'toy chaysim, do you need a double seal to be sure that the guy will not tamper with it, or is one seal good enough? Rabbi Eliezer says one seal is good enough because we're not concerned that the guy is going to remove that seal and then reseal it again. So we see that we're not concerned for both of these things. We're not concerned for the guy to make a hole, and we're also not concerned for the guy to take off the lid and reseal it again. So if so, ha'idna, today, as the Gemara says, that today we see, my time why do we not store our wine, which is sealed, in the hands of Goyim? We're not concerned for not a hole and not for him removing the lid. And says the Gemara, the reason is mishum shaycha. Because of the shaycha. What's this shaycha? So Rashi says shaycha is this very small hole that they had in these barrels of wine in order to be able to smell what the condition of the wine is. So on that very small hole, without making any hole, without removing the lid, the guy could stick a straw inside and drink from it. And therefore, we can't store the wine by a guy in this kind of situation. That's the concern today, why it has to have a double seal properly without this little hole in it.